Hi guys, welcome to Just Right. I'm Paul Manicone. Thank you for joining me. I know the debate was 2 weeks ago, so I apologize for coming to you late, but I had to do a tremendous amount of research to expose Kamala's lies and to bring you the facts. I did a video when Trump debated Biden, but I limited that video to Joe's top 10 lies. Kamala lied way more than that, so I'm going to have to break this video up into multiple parts. If you like President Trump, if you love your country, and you watched this debate, I am sure it made you furious. This was nothing more than an attempt to sabotage Trump and ensure that he doesn't get reelected. The moderators weren't just biased, they were corrupt. This is election interference. Trump was constantly interrupted and fact-checked when Kamala wasn't challenged at all, even when she told the same old lies that the Democrats have fallen in love with. Here's the first question.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
The question was, do you believe Americans are better off today than they were 4 years ago? Here's her first dodge.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
This is the first lie. You didn't grow up as a middle-class kid. Your mother was a biomedical scientist who studied cancer research, and your father was a tenured professor at Stanford University. So not only did she lie, but she refused to answer the question, and of course they let her get away with it. But let's discuss the point she's trying to make about housing. Yes, housing is too expensive for far too many people, and this affordability crisis is something that you caused, Kamala. Do you know what the median price of a house today is? $412,000. Do you know what that $412,000 house cost under Trump? Just $338,000. We're paying an extra $74,000 to buy the exact same house. You and Joe, because of your stupid policies, drove the price of housing up 22%. Do you know how much it went up under Trump? 8%. Over 4 years. You and Joe did this in 3.5 years. And keep in mind, we're not finished yet because the figures for the third quarter haven't yet been released. And this doesn't tell you the whole story because interest rates have gone up. When Trump left office, interest rates were just 2.65%. Today, under you and Joe, they're 6.35%. And even though that's down from the 7% high just a few months ago, the mortgage payment for that house has nearly doubled. Under Trump, your mortgage payment would be just $1,746. But under you and Joe, it costs $3,322. So not only do you need to save more cash for the down payment, because the price of the home has gone up, you need to bring more cash to closing, you need to work a second job to pay the mortgage. That wasn't the case under Trump. In fact, in 2020, in Trump's last year in office, you needed to earn just $59,000 a year to qualify for the mortgage of an average home. And because the median household income was $66,000, most Americans can afford homes. But under you and Joe, the median income has gone up from $66,000 to $81,000. The amount you now need to earn to qualify for the mortgage has gone up from $59,000 to $106,000. That is a gap of $47,000. Did you get a $47,000 raise this year? And even if you did, we're talking about using this money just to break even. This is for the exact same house you would have gotten under Trump. So yes, there is a housing affordability crisis, and it's your fault. In fact, this isn't limited to just housing. There's an affordability crisis across the board. What Kamala and the corrupt moderators will never tell you is that she and Joe gave Americans a pay cut.
Joe Biden has created an affordability crisis for the typical working families. Their kitchen tables have been squeezed by a 20% rise in overall prices during Biden's term, including a 20% hike in groceries, a near 40% rise in energy, and don't forget gasoline, still $3.50 compared to just over $2 when Trump left the White House. Looking at the actual numbers, average weekly earnings during Mr. Trump's term rose $5,065 to $65,216. It's a good number. Through May 2024, during Mr. Biden's term, those same weekly earnings declined by nearly $3,000 to $62,248. In other words, Biden has given working folks a pay cut, whereas Trump gave them a sizable pay raise.
Larry Kudlow uses real wages, which are wages adjusted for inflation, which is the only true way to measure this. Joe and Kamala will brag that wages have gone up, but what good is getting a 5% raise when everything around you is 20% more expensive? Trump gave middle-class Americans a $5,000 pay raise, and Joe and Kamala gave us a $3,000 pay cut. Those are the facts. Let's go back to the debate.
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
She makes two stupid points here. First, let's talk about the tax cuts. The Democrats love to claim that the Trump tax cuts benefited only the rich. Here are the facts. According to the IRS, the Trump tax cuts helped 91% of all Americans. For those making more than $1 million a year, did see a tax benefit of 5.8%. But those making less than $100,000 a year saw a tax break of 16%, meaning the tax benefit for middle-class families was nearly 3 times greater than those making more than $1 million. And these are the most recent figures. It comes from a report issued by the House Budget Committee in May of this year. And even though the Trump tax cuts are being phased out because they weren't permanent, we still see this tremendous benefit 7 years after it was passed. If we go back to 2017, the year the Trump tax cuts went into effect, the benefit for lower income earners was even greater. Look at this table. It shows the effect of the Trump tax cuts based on income. You could see the lower you scroll down in the table, or the higher the income, the less of a tax break you received. So those making between $5 million and $10 million a year saw a tax break of just 3.48%. But those making between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, in other words, middle income families, they saw a tax break of 18%, which is nearly 6 times higher than those in the highest bracket. And look what it did for the lowest income earners. If you had an AGI of less than $15,000 a year, you saw your taxes decrease by 71%. If you made less than that, you saw a tax break of 87%. So please, Kamala, stop with the lie that the Trump tax cuts benefited only the rich. I know it's hard. I know you just can't help yourself because, like you and all other communists, you love to punish success, especially the 1%. You are obsessed with the 1%. Here you are talking to Mike Pence about it in the 2020 debate.
On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for.
Democrats love to demonize the top 1%. But did you know that the top 1% paid 37% of all income tax? And that was before the Trump tax cuts went into effect. After it was passed, Trump drove that number up 9 percentage points.
The richest 1% paid much more. I mean, Biden always says the rich don't pay their fair share. In 2016 pre-tax cut, the top 1% paid 37% of the taxes, okay? By 2021, the top 1% paid 46%, 45.8%. Okay, so actually the rich are paying more of their fair share. They only make about 20% of the income.
Get it? The Trump tax cuts gave middle-class Americans a tax break while forcing the top 1% to pay more. Those are the facts. Now let's go to her second point about the deficit. In 2020, she said Trump was going to add $2 trillion to the deficit, and now she's saying he's going to add $5. First, it is laughable that Kamala Harris or any other Democrat suddenly cares about spending. But let's talk about the debt and the deficit because they're two completely different things. When the government taxes Americans and brings in that money, they call it revenue. I call it theft, but they call it revenue. They use that revenue to pay the government's bills. When there isn't enough money to cover those bills, the government has to borrow the money to make up the difference. That amount is called the deficit. Each year, the deficit starts at zero. At the end of the year, whatever that deficit happens to be gets added to the national debt. Let's look at the deficits caused by each administration and see the effect they had on our national debt. Forget about this figure for now. We're going to get back to that. Let's scroll down to where it lists the deficits by year. Trump was elected in 2016. His first year in office was 2017. We could see that he added $0.67 trillion to the national debt. The following year, he added another $0.78. In 2019, he added $0.98. And in 2020, the year of COVID, he added $3.13. That gives us a total of $5.56 trillion added to the national debt under the Trump administration. Now let's compare this to what Joe and Kamala did. Their first year in office was 2021. They added $2.77 trillion. The following year, they added $1.38 trillion. And in 2023, they added another $1.7 to give us $5.85 trillion, which is $290 billion more than the Trump administration. But we're not done yet. We have to go back to the top of the page and add the deficit for 2024. So to this figure, we need to add another $1.9 trillion. And you can see Joe and Kamala gave us $7.75 trillion added to the national debt. Compare that to the $5.56 trillion that Trump gave, and we see that Joe and Kamala added an extra $2.2 trillion to the national debt compared to Trump. But keep in mind, we're not finished yet because the year is not over. So the bottom line is Joe and Kamala added more than $2.2 trillion to the national debt than Trump did. And Kamala's going to make it worse because she's going to spend way more than Joe did. Let's go back to the debate.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
Two things. Economists say this. Which ones? Who are they? This is like the fake 51 intel officers. Do you remember that when Anthony Blinken had those corrupt members sign a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake? This is the same thing. Who are these economists, Kamala? Don't say Goldman Sachs, because they've already retracted your last statement. But you're claiming that Trump's policies would cost American families an extra $4,000 per year. Meanwhile, the policies you and Joe have already implemented have cost American families an extra $11,400 per year. And this is from liberal CBS News. But wait, it gets worse. This was reported in November of 2023. In June the following year, that figure jumped to $17,000. You're falsely claiming that Trump's policies are going to cost American families an extra $4,000 per year. Meanwhile, you and Joe have already cost us an extra $17,000 per year. And that's just to break even because of the stupid inflation you and Joe caused. But it gets worse because that $17,000 figure factors in wage growth. Because while inflation has gone up a lot, those in the workforce saw their wages increase a little. But those living on a fixed income, they don't get raises. Do you know how much more money our seniors are paying each year under your policies, Kamala? $29,000 every year because of you. And again, this is from liberal CBS News. Even though the headline says 28,000, that's based on the numbers as of July. Look at the middle paragraph. In an update for August 2024, the increase rose to $29,000. I don't know how any senior citizen could vote for Kamala Harris. Now let's go back for more lies.
I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
That's another lie. When Trump left office, unemployment was 6.4%, way down from the 14.8% caused from COVID. And you're claiming this is the highest unemployment since the Great Depression, which started in 1929 with the stock market crash. Look at this graph. The graph only goes back to about 1950, but you can see even with this limited data, there are several periods where unemployment peaks above 6.4%. So this is another one of your lies. But let's dive into that 6.4% unemployment figure. Unemployment was 4.7% when Trump took over from Obama. And Trump got it all the way down to 3.5% just before COVID. Today, unemployment is 4.2%, meaning it is still higher than it was at pre-COVID levels under Trump. You've had 4 years since the pandemic, Kamala, and you still can't get unemployment to what it was under the Trump administration. Let's go back to the debate. Let's listen to her lie about Project 25.
What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
That's a complete lie, and she knows it's a lie. Trump denies any involvement with Project 25, and he said so on many occasions. Here's just one.
They keep on tying you, whether it's yesterday's testimony when they were talking to Christopher Wray or whether it's Kamala Harris on the stump. They keep on tying you to Project 2025, which is a 900-page tome put out by the Heritage Foundation. What is your response to what's in it, and what would you like to say about the role it's playing in your campaign?
It's a group of very, very conservative people. They wrote a document that many of the points are absolutely ridiculous. I have nothing to do with the document. I've never seen the document. I've seen certain things that are said in it. This is a document I know nothing about and has nothing to do with me whatsoever.
Get it? Trump knows nothing about Project 25. And yet she goes out there and says, no, he fully supports it. By the way, no fact check. Remember, the fact checking is only for Trump. Are you pissed yet? I have so much more I want to share with you, but I'm running long. I'm only 8 minutes into this debate, and look how long the video is already. Please come back and join me for part 2. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. Please hit the like, share this video, and please comment. I answer all of the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you come back and join me, and I'll see you soon.
Brand new this morning, just moments ago, the Harris campaign released a new ad arguing that Project 2025 is the blueprint for a second Trump presidency.